Hey everybody, it's Audrey and welcome back to Chapter and Converse. Today's video is going to be an attempt to tell you what I read in the month of September because it's more than halfway through October and I'm just so behind. And I've done such a bad job of even like writing down the books that I read, and I feel like I'm forgetting some, but then I also feel like if I'm forgetting it, it probably wasn't that memorable. So I have been in full declutter mode, and you can kind of see some of the mess behind me. So I'm kind of like all over the place, but I'm making good progress there, which I think is helping to maybe partially defog my mind a little bit, but it's the end of the day. I had some Zoom calls today, so I had an excuse / reason to actually put some makeup on, and we're losing light because daylight savings hasn't happened yet, but it's basically dark by 7 o'clock. If we're lucky to make it that long. So, going to attempt to power through the books that I read in September and share just a handful of thoughts about them. So let's talk about His and Hers by Alice Feeney. I loved this book. This book is full of all the things that I want in a book. Dual perspectives, our main character having to reluctantly return to her hometown that she so desperately escaped from to leave her past behind, and now she's got to deal with her past, and sort of a mystery in the past and a mystery in the present, and how they connect and do they connect and what all is happening. And it was just, again, all the things I love. So we have two perspectives, his and hers. So it's Anna, who is a reporter, TV journalist, and then Jack, who is a detective inspector, DCI Jack Harper. And we have a dead body like in the first chapter, I want to say, or second chapter, early on, somebody's dead. And he is investigating the murder and she comes to cover it. And the murder took place in her hometown, which is outside of London. And they kind of butt heads as they're both basically investigating the murder and trying to find out what all is going on. This is one of those books, kind of like every thriller, go into it blind. There is some police detective-y stuff in it, but it's not total hardcore cop thriller, if that's not your thing, because you are getting the journalist perspective as well. And there's just, like I said, histories and dual timelines and mysteries and what's happening, and you get the little breadcrumbs, and eventually you get like the whole loaf of bread at the end, and it's great. So highly recommend this book. I did a TBR for Buzzwordathon, and I never told you guys what I actually read or anything like that. So I wound up reading, I would say 2.5 books, because I finished the third book in October, so we'll save that one for later. But the first book I read, Buzzword being Night, is The Night Swim by Megan Golden. And I loved this book. Megan Golden wrote The Escape Room, which I read at the beginning of this year, and I loved it. She's 100% an auto-buy author for me. I just love her storytelling and her writing style and her characters. But again, tropes I love, multiple perspectives, mystery in the past, mystery in the present. Do they connect at all? If so, how? Just something that happened in the same small town. Podcast. So it's all the things, and it's just really good. So we have a true crime podcast, and typically she does cold cases, but this time she decides to do an active case. And she travels to, I don't know if it matters what town she goes to, but Rachel goes to this small town, and a resident of that town who is, I want to say he's in college, but he's like on his path to be an Olympic swimmer, is accused of raping a high school senior, I want to say she is. And this is the ripple effect of that accusation in the town. And it's like not really Beartown vibes, but kind of Beartown vibes in the sense that he's like hometown hero, again, Olympic hopeful. So it's very divisive in the town. So there's a ton of people who are just like, there's no way he would ever do this. He's the golden boy. She isn't the golden girl. So she was asking for it. She was looking for it. She had a night of regrettable sex, and now she's calling rape. And it becomes an extremely difficult, interesting look at rape culture, at the victim, at perceptions around it, there's a court case extremely central to this because it is the podcast about the trial. It's about how rape victims are treated, the difficulty of a he said, she said situation. And then at the same time, our podcaster Rachel is getting these notes on her car from an anonymous person asking her to investigate a crime that happened in this same town, I want to say 20 years earlier, 25 years earlier. And even though Rachel's podcast partner is kind of like, you just need to focus on the trial of what you're here for, she just kind of can't resist this true crime case that happened all these years ago. So we get both things, both crimes, cases happening, revealing, again, the breadcrumbs. And I would say like it's also just such an interesting story about grief and about guilt and, you know, like personal guilt that you feel for not having done something differently, or the guilt that people are carrying with them as a repercussion of things that happened in their past and how it forms them in the present day, which sounds probably kind of vague, which is fine because I don't want to give stuff away. But I thought it was incredibly well done. I was completely engaged. I wanted to know what was going to happen next. I loved Rachel as a character. I think this 100% has potential to be a series, but I just really enjoyed it. I think she's a great writer and a great storyteller. And again, highly recommend this one. The second book I finished this month in September for Buzzwordathon is The Night Before by Wendy Walker. And I would say I was pleasantly surprised by how much I enjoyed this because, as I had mentioned in my Buzzwordathon video, I didn't wholly love her first book, All Is Not Forgotten. And I have 4 Wendy Walker books. Even though I didn't enjoy the first one, I enjoy her as a writer, as a creator. I have done classes that she's done online. I listen to her on podcasts. She does lots of Instagram lives. She's done a lot of events, especially during COVID. Long story short, too late. I really enjoyed this book. And this was about 2 sisters. And again, we have multiple perspectives, a mystery in the past. How does it tie to the present? I feel like this entire month, with few exceptions, is going to have a theme to it. So this is about sisters Laura and Rosie. And Laura is kind of like, it's like the good sister and the bad sister, I would say. So Laura's kind of like the bad sister. She's a little wild. She's not completely tied down to anything. And she kind of left Connecticut when they were younger. She lives in New York City, and she winds up coming back to Connecticut to live with her sister after a bad breakup and things kind of go sideways in New York. And her sister Rosie is happily married, and she has the kid, and they have the house, and they have like that, you know, perfect life. And she has roots and friends from when they were growing up, and she is very tied to the community and has sort of a very stable life for all intents and purposes. And Laura winds up, you know, doing some online dating and going out on, I think it's a Thursday night, for a blind date, and she never comes home. And her sister obviously is concerned because she's not answering her phone, and she had taken Rosie's car. As irresponsible as her sister is, this is sort of more irresponsible than she would ever be. So we wind up getting the 2 perspectives of Laura when she goes out on the date. So it's the night of for her, and then, or the night before, as the case may be. And then we get Rosie's perspective the next morning when her sister doesn't come home, and her husband and their friends trying to figure out what on earth happened to her sister. So I wound up doing the beginning of this actually on audiobook, and then I wound up reading the rest of it. So I wound up kind of doing probably 60-40, I would say, audio versus physically reading it. What I will say is that this went places I didn't expect it to go, and I mean that in a good way, but I kind of thought I was on like a certain path, and then I feel like I probably should have known better after having read Wendy Walker's first book, but I was like, dang, like you did it, you went there, and poof, had a little bit of whiplash. So I enjoyed it. So again, pleasantly surprised. I'm excited to dive into her other 2 books. So I just bought Don't Look For Me, her new book, which is all the way over there. And then,
oh, she has another book.
Emma in the Night is the other one, which I've heard such great things about. But there you have it. I really enjoyed it. So, sister story, will make you never want to online date, and set in Connecticut, which I love a suburban story too. I picked up It's Always the Husband by Michelle Campbell, and I read a bulk of this in August, but finished it at the beginning of September. So I picked this up because somebody I was watching on BookTube, perhaps Mara from Books Like Whoa, or Alexa Dunn, who are two ladies that I love to get thriller recommendations from. But one of them was talking about this book and saying how great it was and how it just like hit the spot for them. And I was like, man, I have that book on my shelf and I've never read it before, duh. So I wound up grabbing it and I'm glad I did. So this book is 2 timelines. Something happens in the past, something happens in the present. And this is about 3 girls who met freshman year in college. The universe put them together in the housing lottery and they wound up being roommates freshman year. And it is Kate, Aubrey, and Jenny. And they are basically typical college experience situation in that there are 3 people from 3 different worlds, couldn't be more different, would never be friends in real life if the universe sort of hadn't slapped them all together in the same room freshman year, and they become bonded for life when something happens while they are in college that kind of connects them forever. And even though there is struggle between the girls, and anytime you have 3 people, it can be 2 against 1 at certain times, and lots of ups and downs and lots of drama and lots of trauma, and just lots of messed up things that can happen when you are in college. We fast forward to present day, which is, I want to say the book opens in present day, and we know from the start that one of the girls dies. And what we don't know is who or who did it, but it's always the husband, right? So we get multiple perspectives kind of back and forth, and we start to piece together what happened in the past, what happened in the present, who, what, where, when, why. And I really enjoyed it. So again, a book that I wasn't quite sure where it was going to go. There were some places I thought it was going. It took some different turns. I really enjoyed the characters. If you've ever had a frenemy, and I think like all that typical girl angst that can happen, whether it's high school or college, in girl friend groups, it's all there, and sometimes it carries into adulthood. And for people who continue to stay friends but maybe never get past some of the angst, and there's just a lot of complicated crap going on with this group as well and in their lives, and everybody is like a little bit unlikable, I think. So everybody's kind of got like a shady dark side to them, and it's one of those books where like I wasn't rooting for anyone to not, like, kind of any of them could have been the dead body. I don't think I would have been sad about it because they all had done some pretty crappy things. So I really enjoyed it. This is the first Michelle Campbell book I read. Yeah, this came out in 2017, so I'm gonna need to check and see what else she's done since then, because I really enjoyed this book. I thought it was well done. Again, needed to know what was going to happen next, and I don't know why, but I just love the girl friendship drama of it all. So this was good. I'm going to talk about the next 2 books together because I started and ended the month with Talia Hibbert's Get a Life, Chloe Brown, and Take a Hint, Danny Brown. So those are the first 2 books in her Brown Sister trilogy. There is a 3rd book coming out. Don't ask me when, but I'm definitely going to be giving it a go. And Take a Hint, or no, Get a Life, Chloe Brown is one that I have heard a ton about. These are romance-ish novels, sort of like friends to lovers, hate to love, fake dating, that kind of a thing, which isn't always my jam. But again, after I read Red, White, and Royal Blue, I kind of got like the feels for some romance again, which I have not had in a really long time, because usually I spend my world in like a very dark, thrillery place of murder and heinous people. So I will say it was very nice to read something that was, I loosely use the term light, because there were moments of levity and good humor to these books. But what's amazing about both of Talia Hibbert's books, and which I imagine will very much play a part in her 3rd one, is there are far more complicated issues that are at play. And while it's sort of that illustrated cover of a book that looks like it's just lightness, there's so much depth to both of these books, and they both made me cry. They both sent me to places again I didn't expect to go, and I loved them both. I did the audiobook of both. So British narrators, which I feel like I mentioned this in one of my reviews. I don't know what it is, but when someone with a British accent says the word sweetheart, I basically die on the inside. And all of that started with red, white, and royal blue also. So just know that that's happening in this book. So let's start with Chloe. So in the opening pages, Chloe has like this near-death experience where like she almost gets hit by a car. And she kind of reassesses her life and realizes that she needs to get one. And she is 31 years old. She winds up moving into this new apartment, and Chloe has fibromyalgia. So she deals with chronic pain. She has always been supported by her family, sometimes physically, often emotionally, and she wants to be out on her own. And even though her family is kind of like, ooh, she's like, I need to do this, like I need to get a life. So she moves into this apartment building, and the super for that building, this guy named Red, she just, it sounds so silly, but she winds up like going up a tree to get this cat that she sees, and he basically winds up helping her get out of the tree. And we kind of go to this like enemies to lovers sort of a situation between the two of them. And it is like hysterically funny at certain times. It is very racy at certain times. And again, there is chronic pain that she is living with, and it is a lot about her story and how she deals on a day-to-day basis. And I have never read a book that has dealt with fibromyalgia. It is not something I have any personal experience with. But it goes into very interesting, honest detail about the insomnia, the pain, how she copes, her day-to-day struggles, how she tries to just persevere, and to a degree, a stubbornness of wanting to be able to handle things on her own, and to a degree having to be vulnerable and let people in and let people help her. And I thought it was so well done because it's just woven into the story, because it's just Chloe's story. So it's not a soapbox, it's not a PSA, it is just like, I suffer from migraines, it's just a part of my existence. It's just a part of who she is. I just thought it was so well done. I really enjoyed the story, I enjoyed the characters, Chloe's great, and then her sisters, Danny and Eve, are woven into this one, so when we get, take a hint, Danny Brown, we already know who people are in it, and we've sort of established this entire family and built out this great community. So then the second book in the series, and you don't need to read the first book to get the second book, but I would, because why wouldn't you? But the second book is Take a Hint, Danny Brown, and Danny and Zafir are friends, like work colleagues, in the sense that she is a PhD student and a teacher, and he is the security guard in her building. And they have known each other for a while. They sort of have this flirtatious friendship, but she is just getting out of a relationship with this woman, Jo, that she used to work with. So she is bisexual, but he doesn't know that. And she's just kind of looking for a rebound role in the hay, but nothing serious. And something happens, and they wind up basically, he rescues her from a fire drill that she doesn't realize is a fire drill. And when he brings her out of the building, he's like literally carrying her, and people start to videotape it on their phones, and it winds up going viral. And it catches on quickly because people start to recognize him as this former rugby star who quit playing rugby for certain reasons and has kind of been not so much in hiding, but kind of under the radar. So he kind of gets outed, and they wind up needing each other, so to speak. So he needs her to help with sort of this viral situation that's happening. And again, she's just looking for someone to have some fun with. So they wind up doing some fake dating. And we know where that's going to go with this kind of a book, because it's a romance book, and it is so sweet and so adorable. And I will say, I enjoyed this book more than I enjoyed Chloe. But in all fairness, I very much enjoyed Chloe. But in this book, there's a much, well, it's a much different story, so I can't even compare them in this sense. But there's so much about grief in this book that, again, there is such levity and great humor and blush-worthy sexy scenes. But there is also this really solid story around grief and coping and depression and anxiety and just sort of getting through day to day when something really crappy has happened to you. And much like with Chloe and her fibromyalgia, it's just woven into the story as a part of the story. So it is not, again, it's not a soapbox, it's not a preach, it's not any of that stuff. It is just part of who these people are. And I think that's the beauty of Talia Hibbert's writing, is it just feels like it's part of the story and it's part of their story. And I 100% cried during this book. The audiobook is tremendous. I highly recommend it. I just think you can't go wrong. So they surprised me in the level of, I expected it to be much more lighthearted, and I'm not sad that they weren't lighthearted, but there was tons of levity to it. So I would recommend these books. I think if they sound a little bit outside of your zone, give it a go, because again, these are not books that I normally would have gravitated to until I kind of broke my romance. Not even a ban, but I just wasn't reading romance. But everyone and their dog is talking about these books, I feel like, on BookTube. And again, Eve's book is coming out next. So it's a great series. I would pick them up in order because it's more fun, because when Chloe shows up in book number 2, it'll make more sense to you. So start at the beginning, easy reads, good times, and it will give you all the feels in all the ways, which we all need, right? So the next book is The Patient by Jasper DeWitt. And I heard about this from Gabby at Gabby Reads, and I think it's the only reason this ever would have crossed my radar. So this is like psychological, really mess with your brain / kind of horror, kind of like dances on a whole bunch of lines. This book freaked me out. It's not that long of a book. You can read it super quickly. I caution you to read it before bed because it might give you all the nightmares. But this is slightly in the vein of The Silent Patient, in that we have this psychiatrist who basically thinks that he can crack this crazy case at this hospital that no one else has been able to crack. And basically this patient has been at this hospital for his entire life. I want to say he was checked in when he was about 7, and he's in his early 40s now, I believe. And the creepy thing, a lot of creepy things, but he basically, anyone who has tried to treat him or spends an extended amount of time with him and comes into contact with him, or God forbid, wound up being one of his roommates, is basically either driven insane or driven to kill themselves or just dead. And nobody can get to the bottom of it. He is basically like on an isolated ward now. And our strapping young psychiatrist is gonna be the one who's going to do the breakthrough. And this book is messed up, you guys. And it's like so far out of my comfort zone in some ways, but I feel like since I got like back with like, even though Home Before Dark wasn't horror, it's the line that Riley Sager dances on, my horror intent has been up a little bit. And it's interesting what some people consider horror and some people don't, because to me, I feel like I always think of horror movies, and there's so many other things that could be horror in books. So I really liked this one. I say, if super messed up psychological, screwing with your head, Silence of the Lambs, taste of horror is not your thing, this might not be for you. But if you have a curiosity effect, like this is not like The Silent Patient in any kind of a way, except for the cocky psychiatrist who's going to like fix our patient. This book will mess with your head. It definitely left me spinning. It definitely left me completely freaked out. It is the kind of book that might give you nightmares if you are prone to that kind of thing. So it's October, it's Halloween, life is creepy at this time of year, so give it a go. Again, it's super short, it's well worth the read. This is a debut novel, and I am so curious to see what he comes up with next. The next book I listened to is Sister Dear by Hannah Mary McKinnon. And this is a book that I had heard some great things about, and for me, it was just like, okay. So her book, The Neighbors, which I read a couple years ago, I really enjoyed, and I highly recommend that book. This book was just a little bit not enough for me, I would say. And this is a book about a woman named Eleanor, and in the opening pages, her father passes away, and she finds out that he actually isn't her father, and she's the product of an affair that her mom had. So all sorts of messed up from finding that out. Eleanor is committed to finding out who her father is. And she finds him and then sees he has like a family of his own and a daughter who is basically her age. So Eleanor seeks her out to befriend her. And Eleanor is sort of described as frumpy, and while she's super smart, she doesn't quite have it all together, and she's lacking in self-esteem, and her fashion sucks, and she's totally insecure. And her whole world has been blown up because her dad, who was her everything, isn't really her father. And the girl who's her sister, wait for it, Victoria, is of course perfect. She is beautiful, she is rich, she's married to this stunning man, she's got it all. Eleanor's biological father and Victoria's father is super rich and successful, and she is filled with all of the jealousy, and I feel like the tagline on the book is like, she'd kill to be her. And there were parts of it that I thought were okay. I felt like there was some good potential, but ultimately the ending just fell flat for me. And I could see where it was going, and it just was like a little bit too predictable, and I didn't love anything about the ending, and I was just sort of disappointed. So I probably like ranked it at 3 stars because it started out good and I liked the concept of it, but it just didn't deliver for me. So I mentioned to you guys a few times that I'm on this decluttering, editing journey of mine. If you haven't binge watched The Home Edit on Netflix, I highly recommend it for the eye candy alone. But I am slowly working my way through things, and I've been listening to different podcasts and watching different YouTube videos just to get like some inspiration and just to stay motivated and to get some good tips and tricks. And I also have been reading / listening to some books. So I listened to The Year of Less by Kate Flanders, and interestingly enough, this was not really about her journey to minimalism. It was sort of about everything else that was going on in her life at the same time. So to me, it was more like memoir with sprinkles of minimalism rather than minimalism with sprinkles of memoir. So it was an easy read. I listened to it. She narrates it. There were a couple good takeaways. It wasn't exactly what I thought it was going to be, but I would still, if this is of interest to you, sort of the minimalism journey or just listening to people talk books, I would say this might be worth listening to. But then I wound up DNFing 2 other books that I got. And I got them from the library. So the first one was The Year of No Clutter by Eve O. Schwab. And then the second one is How to Manage Your Home Without Losing Your Mind by Dana K. White. So I will say I really enjoyed Decluttering at the Speed of Life by Dana White. And I read that 2 years ago when I first started my journey that wound up just petering out. And I really like her style. I feel like that book came out later, and I feel like she really found her voice later. So I would recommend that one. These just weren't what I was looking for. I was looking for more inspiration and instruction than I was looking for memoirs. And these kind of felt memoir-y to me. So no ding on either book. I want to say I got halfway through the Dana White book and like 25% of the way through the Eve Schwab book, but it just wasn't what I was looking for. So the books themselves were not bad, just not what I was looking to read. We are simultaneously basically out of light and basically out of memory on my video card. So that is it for the month of September. Let me know if you guys have read any of these books, what you read that was great, anything creepy, fabulous, wonderful that you're reading these days, and we can chat down below. So thank you guys for watching. Thanks for finding me if you have kind of given up on me. I know I haven't been great at this lately, but I appreciate you guys for being here and spending some of your day with me, and I hope you guys are doing great. So I will see you guys in the next video. Take care, everybody.